All right, hello everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Um, so Amy and Vicky, thank you for being here. So I just want to say welcome to our webinar today. And this is our third webinar in our series titled Implementing Multi-Tiered Systems of Support for Reading in Secondary Schools. So in our first two webinars, we really focused on multi-tiered systems of support for literacy in middle and high schools. And in today's webinar, we'll be really expanding our conversation to include the college level and really thinking about reading at the college level. And we'll talk with two individuals who are exploring ways to support learners as they enter into the college setting. But before we jump into the content, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, I'm Margaret Opetz. I'm the Director of Research and Literacy at CAPD. And today I'm joined by Dr. Amy Charlton, who is an assistant professor with a focus on innovative teaching strategies in nursing education. And in Amy's work, she integrates trauma-informed care into her classes and is passionate about student success and fostering resilience in academic environments. She's also actively involved in research, including a recent project which we'll talk about today called Collegiate Success Strategies, and she enjoys creating engaging student-centered learning experiences. So thank you for being here today, Dr. Charlton.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and then we are also joined by Vicky. And Vicky, I should have asked you for how you pronounce your last name.
Reckadal.
Reckadal. Okay. So we're joined by Vicky Reckadal, who is an educational therapist who guides high school and college students to implement strategies that work for them in comprehension, mindset, systems, and routines, so that they can really thrive in school and beyond school. And she partnered with Dr. Charlton recently on that project that I referenced earlier called Collegiate Success Strategies. So thank you so much for being here today, Vicky.
Happy to be here.
And then finally, we're joined by Ryan Hershey. And Ryan Hershey is a literacy specialist here at CAPD. And in his role, he brings decades of teaching experience and a wealth of knowledge into the work he does. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that today's webinar will really help you understand how to support learners as they prepare for college and enter into the college setting. As today's agenda goes, what we're really going to start off with is thinking about what does it mean to be college and career ready? And then we're going to talk a lot with Amy in this first half about what was the current reality that she was seeing with her nursing students. And then we'll talk about the solution, the kind of like their idea behind how Dr. Charlton and Vicky came to collaborate to really support students in college level reading. And then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. All right, so I'd like to start us off with just thinking about what does it mean to be college ready? I think we talk a lot about like what students can and cannot do, especially at the secondary level, where we know that the latest test results are kind of telling us that things aren't necessarily going well for literacy achievement. But I think we also need to focus on what is the ultimate goal within literacy, and what does it truly mean to be set up for success and long-term success, being ready for college or entering into a career. So in preparing for this, I really wanted to look at the Common Core state standards again, because this really transformed the education field around 2010 when these were established and like first came out. So when the creators of the Common Core state standards really put together what it means to be college ready, they started with that as their end goal, and then they backwards designed the standards to be able to say, here's what students really need to be able to do by the time that they get to college. And they mapped it all the way back to kindergarten. And this was a huge shift because we saw that it was really rigorous. To be college ready is a rigorous process to get there. But if you haven't looked at that in a while, and I know I hadn't, here's what the creators of the Common Core basically said. They say that students need to demonstrate independence. And what that means is demonstrate independence in their reading and writing skills. So can they read a text and evaluate it? Can they do this across different types of texts and in different disciplines? So they need to be able to do that independently. So by the time that they get to college, when they enter into their content area classes that they're getting like more increasingly becoming an expert in, can they do that type of work with independence? And then if they can't, they need to be able to build strong content knowledge on their own. So that means that students would have to be able to know how to research, find the resources to build up their content knowledge, and to be able to do this on an independent basis so that they can become subject area experts. And then we also know that the creators of the Common Core also said students needed to be able to vary the way that they present information based off of the audience, the task, the purpose, and the discipline. So that they need to be able to think about how to communicate with people in different disciplines. And Dr. Charlton is coming today from the nursing field. So that's a very discipline specific type of knowledge base that she brings to this setting and the project that she worked on. But it would be true for every single discipline, whether you're going into education compared to nursing or, compared to becoming a science teacher versus a history teacher, that all of these different disciplines really require different demands from us. And then the next piece is that students need to be able to comprehend as well as critique. So that means that students need to be able to read something with an open mind, but then also evaluate it. Does the reasoning that's presented in the text hold up? Where are the references coming from? How do we know that this information is true? So as I'm saying all of this, I hope you're kind of gathering that like this is a pretty big task for students to get to that point. And as a former pre-service teacher educator, I know that this isn't something that comes easily, and it's something that does have to be taught. Um, and then just to continue going with some of these other things, we know that students also need to be able to use digital media and be able to use digital resources effectively. So I'm going to move ahead to this next slide that also mentions something that is within the Common Core, but I think has become increasingly more obvious the the longer that we have computers and access to information. It's becoming increasingly clear that students really need to have a solid foundation in 21st century reading skills and also these like broader skills as well, where they are able to use technology and be flexible in their use of it. So for the 21st century skills, these were really established, and there's 12 of these different skills. And because we're really focused on literacy today, I'm not trying to devalue any of the other skills, but we're really going to look at the literacy skills today. But there are these others, learning skills and then life skills as well. But when we look at the literacy skills, these are really important skills when we think about the digital age that we're living in. So that first one is information. And when we think about information literacy, this is a foundational skill that requires students to be able to look at tons and tons of information and be able to separate fact from fiction, and to be able to do this while being able to like look at the resources or the references that it's coming from. I think this is probably one of the biggest things that we need to be able to teach students right now, because there's so much false information on the internet. So this is definitely one of those areas that I think is really important for us to think about. And then we also have the media literacy. So this is really about being able to distinguish between sources of information that are credible and the ones that aren't. So it's a little bit different from that information side of things, because for the media one, this would be like news sites or, like podcasts, things that they're presenting information through a media outlet, not necessarily in a written like scholarly piece or something that's published online. And then finally, we also have to teach students how to use technology. And this one really is thinking about the various types of machines that we're using in this information age. So we know that there's computers, and then we also have like mobile devices. Like students have to be able to use different types of those machines to be able to become literate in the world. So this really gives students like that basic information that they need to know what gadget performs what task. I read something recently that was talking about all of the wearable technology and how that is kind of that next piece of technology literacy is how do we use wearables like watches or like the Aura Ring, and really be able to use that information to help us. I think that kind of stretches our thinking in terms of literacy, but being able to understand that data is really important. All right, so with all of that being said, those are really the things that we think about when we say college and career ready. And it seems like the increasing amount of information that students need to be able to take in and do something meaningful with and be able to decipher fact from fiction, it's kind of increasing at this really rapid pace. And one of the things that we know is that there's a problem that um, students don't necessarily come into college, into that setting with all of those prerequisite skills that we'd like them to have. And this is definitely one of the areas that Dr. Charlton is going to share her experience on. And she's not alone in saying that this is a problem. And Dr. Charlton, I'm just going to share one more statistic here that I found interesting that kind of supported the work that you were doing. And when college professors and instructors were surveyed recently, and they were asked, are students ready for college? There were only 14% that said, yes, students are prepared for college. And I think that's a little bit concerning. And then I think the work that you were doing within your project can really help us think through how can we really support students in this setting. So first off, can you just tell us a little bit about kind of the problem or like the observations that you had initially as you kind of started your work in this area?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much, Brian and Margaret, for having me. I'm really excited to get to share some of our insight. So one of the things that is a background piece that's really important for me to have everyone know is I am dyslexic. So my background helped me to know what some of my students might be going through. And so in the nursing program, obviously we have really high achieving students. Some of them are just really motivated and driven, right? But they don't have the skills to do these huge swaths of text, to read these complex texts without the benefit of tips, tricks, and tools. So we noticed that the students are really struggling, and we all know that the mental health of our students is of greatest priority right now, and so it can really impact confidence level. And so really getting that key bit of information that they're trying to take away from the text to then put that into a critical thinking, to then problem solve and then relate that to the patient. Those are huge jumps in the way that we manage our patients. And those are big areas that we need to connect. And so if we don't start with the knowledge base of being able to read it, retain it, and use it, then we're really struggling from the beginning. And our students like myself that might be differently abled in reading are really struggling to get even started. And so they can feel behind before they get started. They can lose confidence. And we all need nurses. And so we're really organized around what is it going to take to get our nurses built up and graduated so that they can take care of us, right? So at the end of the day, the goal was for me to start digging in, right? So I did some research on what's best evidence-based practice for understanding students' reading abilities and really their beliefs in their reading abilities. So again, going back to that confidence, going back to that mental health, going back to that stability of having some assurance that you can actually do this thing of nursing school, which is a beast, right? And so when I was looking through the research, I found this tool that was used and definitely gold standard for understanding not only reading comprehension, but the way that we were able to use that in scenarios, right? Scenario-based learning and seeing how students are actually grasping the information to then implement it for solution finding. So with all of that, defining the problem, it wasn't intelligence and it's not, their effort, and there are definitely discipline specific challenges with the amounts of reading that we need to do. But nursing just requires a lot of deep analytical thinking, and that is going to only occur from understanding and reading and comprehending the material. So the students really often aren't trained for that and don't have tools. So with that impacting their academic performance and even their persistence to graduation was a huge thing. So I was taking that to my dean and understanding like wanting to address it, wanting to look at it, and wanting to really understand the problem more holistically as a whole person formation for our students. And so that's when I got to meet Vicki Rekadal, who is now my dear friend, which I'm so grateful for. So I'm not sure how much more you want me to say about that, but
And
I
you
was
know what?
going to talk. Go
I
ahead.
didn't go ahead to this slide, but yeah, did you want to say anything? I think you kind of already mentioned these, but yeah, did you want to say any more on
Yes.
it, what it means to be kind of college ready for nursing?
Right. So it means for me, in the beginning of trying to do like the initial stages of figuring out how we wanted to assess students, was really trying to understand what is the tool out there that is helping researchers really understand students' comprehension, right?
Mhm.
And so that's when we found, that's when I met Vicki. I was talking to Vicki about her strategies, and that's when I found MTSS and Read Authentics and reached out to you and started building that. But I really feel like that whole understanding of how our students are, how we are informing ourselves on our student needs, it was really powerful to get to understand the problem and understand that there was, in fact, a tool out there that was a gold standard in assessment for
Mhm.
this.
Yeah, okay, so I think that kind of leads us into this like confirmation of the problem. Like you had a lot of observations that you were making, and you mentioned you went to your dean, and then I also really appreciate you mentioning it wasn't a lack of intelligence. It is truly these complex skills and tasks that students are asked. They take time to um, develop, but then it's also about like what Vicky will talk about. There's like strategies that you can really use to support students in building that. Um, but I did want to just mention that that assessment that you just mentioned. I think having an assessment to measure those complex literacy skills was really important. And Ryan's going to walk us through a little bit more of that. But I do want to just take a second to um, talk about Read Authentics because I don't know if a lot of people know what that is or even what a scenario-based assessment is. So Ryan is going to walk us through that. But Amy and Vicky would love to have you talk more about it after Ryan introduces it. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can kind of introduce everybody to what Read Authentics is, just to so everyone has like the appropriate background knowledge on this.
Sure.
I'll let you
Yeah. So,
let you go.
um, so yeah, I mean, even as hearing Amy speak about her experiences, like makes me realize how complex an individual learner is and how do we grasp a better picture of all of those skills and skill sets. Um, and so obviously when we're talking about 21st century skills, um, and then the reading comprehension piece. But a lot of times that executive functioning piece gets overlooked, and that's why I wanted to bring in this the active view of reading from Duke and Cartwright, because a lot of the earlier models of views of reading did a great job of helping us understand the foundational skills that contribute to comprehension. But um, I think you have to consider the active self-regulation that that the learner is is using when they're reading too. So I just kind of wanted to share that active view of reading first before we got into this, because that engagement and motivation is such a critical part to getting a true accurate gauge of a student's abilities. So Read Authentics is considered or can be described as an assessment for learning, because it's not just assessing what has been learned, but it's asking the learner what they can do with the information and resources they've gathered for an authentic purpose. And I'll walk you through an example of what this looks like, what this assessment looks like, so you can kind of see all that goes into it. So a scenario-based assessment, it causes the learner to exercise 21st century skills like critical thinking, and it simulates collaboration. It also provides supports and prompts, offering students the opportunity to activate problem-solving techniques while they're determining the best answers and things like that. So we see value in the nature of a scenario-based assessment because it does engage that self-regulation, 21st century skills, and of course, reading comprehension. So this just walks you through the path of what one Read Authentics form includes. So obviously it provides a purpose at the beginning, that's the scenario. And then it evaluates background knowledge. And I'll touch on each of these briefly and just show you an example. And then obviously a critical part is gathering information about the topic, and then what you can do with that information. And ultimately, it's going to check their understanding of the topic, the depth of understanding that they have on the content, and then produce standards-based results in the form of the Common Core standards that Margaret was mentioning earlier. So when we say it's starting with a task or a scenario, a lot of the times it might be they're contributing to creation of a website or investigating a community issue. This sample that comes from Green Schools is just a middle school aged form. And in this case, they're being asked to consider a local issue and contribute to a website. So that's kind of the first step in engaging and motivating students to interact with the content, is to give them a task and let them know what that task is, where the task is not answer these questions so we know how well you comprehend. And then next, evaluating background knowledge, we know it plays a huge role in reading comprehension, but we often don't get much insight into a student's background knowledge in the context of like their results or their achievement. So this helps in a couple ways. Obviously, we're going to get to see how much they knew about the content and the topic going in, but it also causes the learner to engage in that like self-assessment of, oh, how much do I know about this? Is this connected to the topic or not? And they're able to activate their prior knowledge. This is usually done through a vocabulary activity of some sort. And then obviously the piece that contains the largest piece of the pie of the assessment is the reading and gathering information collaboratively. So it simulates them working in a small group with fellow students. And you'll see on the next few slides as we go through this, you'll see the dialogue and interactions from other characters that actually help can help the student understand like where to look for certain things and guide them in what makes a good summary and understanding all the different parts of the text that are being given to them. And then here's just an example of that where there's dialogue happening between their group surrounding the text and pointing them to thoughts to consider and things like that. And then it also includes also includes a lot of, when we talk about like 21st century literacy skills that involve internet, and this just simulates an internet search results where the learner is engaged in evaluating those and determining which would be most appropriate for their use in research. And then ultimately towards the end of the form, it's going to check their understanding and their depth of knowledge on the information that they've gathered. Here that's done through just a list of different comments, and they're categorizing them as fact, opinion, or off topic or incorrect. And it kind of goes back to that 21st century skill and all the information that we have at our hands now, being able to sift through and determine what is true, what's relevant, which is a complex task. And then finally, what comes from all of that is results that are aligned with the Common Core reading standards. I want to point out that those standards they follow a similar progression to these scenario-based assessments. So the first batch of standards is all around the key ideas and details skills, and so that entails like summarizing and things like that. And then it moves into, and the form follows this too, where you start to consider the text structure, and like hearing Amy talk about the complex texts, it's a skill to understand the specific text structure used in scientific research compared to like history and things like that. So that's kind of the second phase of these standards, is the craft and structure, considering different points of view, author's perspective, and things like that. And then maybe the most insightful one, especially when we're talking about college readiness, would be that integration of knowledge and ideas that includes reading tasks like critical analysis and evaluating arguments, and application, obviously. So all of that to to kind of show what happened with Amy and Vicky here. We'll get into some of the findings, and we'll kind of just give a broad overview of what came out of this for the students that had taken this test. And then I'll again defer to Vicky to hear what she found in these, and the implications for what to do about it. So as we go to the next screen, these graphs follow that same progression of standards. So we're looking at the key ideas and details, is that first bar, and craft and structure, and then integration of knowledge. And we notice that as the assessment progressed in complexity, the ability level decreased by the students. So ultimately, in the integration of knowledge, the majority of the students, or over half of the students, were in that low performance ability group. And so I would love to bring Vicky in and have her discuss what she did with this, and her response to the data.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the assessment results were really interesting to see from the students, and then we took them, and I kind of adapted what I offered to the students in the program based on that. It kind of what you showed there, we have to start with that decoding ability. Do the students actually have auditory analysis skills and phonemic awareness, which is my wheelhouse? I've worked with one of the reasons Amy and I, Dr. Charlton and I, got connected is I've worked with a lot of people with dyslexia, have dyslexia. It's a heritable condition, and I have that in my family as well. And So I have a great interest in people's ability to decode, and I know that the multi-syllable words in a nursing program, anatomy, physiology, are quite complex, but it's easy to decode them. So I kind of started with that framework as a foundation and evaluated what the students knew from there. And then I loved the comprehension, moving to the comprehension piece. And so I took that information and I helped motivate their interest in looking at learning in a different way, because moving from high school, where everything is quite teacher-led, to college, where the learning is very much student-led. The teachers have their syllabi, but students have to engage with it, and they have to decide what's going to take them to learn. So I took that, and so I just taught them the learning science of how we encode content for the first time, and then we test and assess ourselves, hopefully before the test, to evaluate what we can retrieve. And if we can't retrieve something, we need to encode it in a new way. And so people have outdated understanding about the learning styles, thinking, oh, I'm an auditory learner, I'm a visual learner. And the current science that's actually been it's been in the know for about 20 years, is that multimodal dual encoding is the most efficient and effective way for people to learn. But that is, high school students that are new freshmen are often resistant to, oh, I only learn visually. Well, I would like to say, if you learn visually, how is your inner eye working? Can you visualize the words? And can you visualize the letter clusters, the syllables in the words? And can you connect your neural pathways to those prefixes and suffixes and discover where they are connected in other areas? Like in anatomy and physiology, there are a lot of prefixes that are used, like micro. Micro is used in many different areas. And if students start to think about the words they're reading with that comprehension factor and connect them to all these different areas, can make a lot more sense to them. And then they really own it. They move past the understanding, the remembering and understanding, and on to the applying and the analyzing and the evaluating level. So I worked with them in that different types of retrieval. I worked with them in using all of their learning senses, verbal, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I worked with them being active in that reading when they read a paragraph, and I had a lot of resistance to this at first until they did it. And then they were like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I said, read a paragraph and summarize it. And then read the next paragraph and weave the summary from the first paragraph into the second paragraph and continue on through the chapter. And I just had them do it with a page, and then I had them talk to each other because we were in groups together. And they were interested at how effective it could be and also how different their summaries were. And then I also talked to them about, again, the neuroscience, the forgetting curve. And so I said, again, in college, where it is more student directed than teacher directed, 20 minutes after you leave a class, you will forget 40% of what you heard. And you will go on to, within 24 hours, forget 60% of what you heard. So everybody retrieve what you just heard today really fast after you leave here, if you want it to stick. But
Vicky, we should have started with you in this webinar then. Now I'm terrified that everyone's going to just
it is, it's amazing. And it was quite motivating for the students. And it also adds to their understanding that cramming at the last minute is not an effective way to learn. That concept of memory consolidation, and that we need spaced retrieval. So we need repetition plus variation plus spacing. That's the formula for learning anything. And so those were some of the key points that I shared with the students that they took away that I think influenced their own. We did these assessments to help students think about how well they felt about their learning ability, and we saw improvement by the end, that students had more self-efficacy after going through our 6 sessions.
That's great. So actually, that's what I was going to ask. How much time did you have with them?
It was less than I was hoping. We had a little glitches taking the first assessment, so we lost 1 or 2 times. And so I think we had 6 sessions.
What I love about what you shared is that like it's applicable in any learning setting,
Yes.
and to any content area. So this isn't something just used in ELA, high school English classes, things like that. It can be done in every discipline.
Yeah.
Obviously, the work you and Amy have combined on shows that. So I think I probably know what kind of answer you're going to give here, but what instructional recommendations would you make that were to high school scenarios that you would think would be most beneficial to students?
Well, I love when if a high school teacher could teach just even a little bit about the neuroscience, brain science of learning, and to be a little bit more transparent that they have their preferred pet tools and tricks that they offer their students, but to say you have freedom to use this, but it's not the only way for you to learn if your brain encodes better in a different way. I would hope teachers would teach that, and just the retrieval fact. Teachers would do well to ask their students in the first 5 minutes of class, what did you remember from last time? What questions do you have? What are you curious about in this upcoming class with this title? And before they leave, what are 3 new things that you're going to take today? Because even that is going to improve their students' retrieval ability, and that's learning retrieval.
I love that. Well, thanks for sharing all your experience, Vicky, and your work in this.
Yeah, I wonder if you two might be able to kind of share what you've done now to support like the learners over the course of the year, and kind of how you're kind of thinking about this. So like you used Read Authentics to help inform some of the instruction that was occurring. But what does this look like in the long term? Yeah, I wonder if you might just share some of your insight there.
So I'll start, and then Vicky chime in and let me know. I think we are just beginning to understand the implications of what we found. Because really the group that we got to study was one of the only groups that was purely coming straight from high school. So there were no non-traditional learners, no folks going back to school that had already had a degree. These were strictly folks coming straight out of high school. So it was a very unusual group to get to study. A couple of the really interesting findings for us were that incidentally, we got to study the largest group of English as additional language speakers in that cohort, and also sort of understanding the complexities of reading something in your non-native language, right? And then all of those pieces have been so powerful in understanding all the complexities of the needs that are there. So it's just the tip of the iceberg, I think, for us to really dive deep and figure out what does this mean for our students coming in the future cohorts. And I think one of the things that we noted, which I spoke to earlier, is that the added benefit of what we did in this assessment was just asking them how they're doing, how they feel, connecting with them. And so now, how does that look? It looks like folks come to my office and they're like, hey, I'm struggling. And so that connection and getting that time with them and getting this for them to come in and say, hey, I just aced that test. So those connection points and just getting the students had a strong feeling that we were really there to support them and understand their needs better. I think it built a lot of trust, and it definitely was enhanced by all of, it's not just one thing, right? But it was one prong of the full picture, and it allowed Vicky to really jump in and do her work of really giving tips, tricks, and tools that could be helping them to work all along the way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was an added benefit, and I think there's more to be unpacked. So when we publish this, which we will, I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to get it to a wider and broader audience, because as you said, it's applicable in many settings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's important for us to kind of note too. And I kind of wonder, I know the two of you are working together, but what does it look like now in terms of like the partnership between the two of you? Like, Vicky, do you do any work with like the nursing faculty to kind of like reinforce those strategies that you taught to students?
I have had the privilege of working with the nursing faculty this year. I worked with 4 different of the nursing professors. Amy was one of them in one of the first entry classes for the nursing students. So I was able to present a lot of these learning strategies in each of those classes. And I also presented in another nursing class with another nurse for like mental health and well-being. And I have also been contracted with the nursing program college for their graduate asynchronous nursing program to develop learning strategy and optimize productivity, flexible mindset videos for their graduate nursing program. So I'm doing that. So I have enjoyed the College of Nursing.
Yeah, okay, that's great to hear. So, and I know you've already touched on this a little bit, but can you share any of the other outcomes that you found kind of from this partnership, whether or not it was like using the data that you had from Read Authentics, but what were the outcomes from your study, or is it still ongoing?
So I'll speak to a little bit of that. We have some of the preliminary findings are showing that we absolutely, if the measure of success was to have students have increase in self-efficacy levels from beginning to end, it happened. And so additionally, we got so much data. I know you've probably been in there before, that we were just inundated with we have so many. So we have pre-post qualitative data, pre-post quantitative data, and the Read Authentics assessment tool. So these 5 sets of data, we worked with our data collaborative here, and it was very helpful because it was able to break that qualitative data into real big themes. And some of the themes were the students really enjoyed the connection of having that time to work together on a specific thing of gaining tools. And another thing, the students really found this opportunity of working as a cohort very fortifying for them as they were going into their next steps as freshmen. But I want to say this, we stand on tall shoulders. And so everyone that was involved in this project were also working in the classroom setting routinely, also giving the students opportunities to practice, to hone their skills, to do the work of writing and reading and crafting statements. And so I think I don't want to ever extract what we did as and set it apart to the side as it is a separate entity. It was part of a whole beautiful project.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that that's really a nice way to kind of sum that up. I also think it's interesting, like the self-efficacy piece seems really critical. And I wonder, Vicky, can you talk to that at all about how you did build self-efficacy in terms of like even having a student go to Dr. Tarleton's office to say like, hey, this is really difficult. I think that's even kind of like part of that self-efficacy, knowing when you need help versus when you don't. So yeah, I wonder if you might be able to talk just a little bit more about that.
I have a tool that I use with students. I call it the Mindset Dissection Journal, and it's where they help identify their thoughts, separate from their feelings. And so it's cognitive behavior therapy concepts where our brains like to have goals and our brains like to answer questions. So if I have a goal as a student to get an A in a class or on a test or a paper, then what's my question? Maybe my question is, am I willing to summarize the chapter paragraph by paragraph to get this A, to get towards my goal? And then as quick as I can, I write down my thoughts, and then just phrases, not sentences. And then I write down my feelings associated directly with those thoughts. And I gave them a feelings wheel to look at, because we are kind of have impoverished vocabulary around feelings. So I gave them a picture where they could like zero in a little bit more on their feelings related to that. And then based on that, I know that feelings are what promote action. And if I have a negative feeling, it's not going to promote action towards my goal. So if my feeling is negative, it's unhelpful at getting me towards my goal. So I just really dissected all of that for them, and I had them work through it in a few different scenarios, like that question I mentioned. And just help them think about, with that concept of a flexible mindset, you know what, you're going to face things that are hard, and you need to, I also talked about the gears for momentum. So when you get to this like block, who is on your team? What is your routine? What are the tools you're using? And what's your self-talk? So I had them like think about those gears for momentum, and I was like, what's missing? So if you're getting stuck, have you reached out to your team? Have you tried to use different tools? What does your self-talk say right now? And what's your routine? Because routine is huge as far as getting what you need to do done in college when you're self-deployed.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating. And I think if I can just make one connection back to like the Read Authentics data that we found, you're talking a lot about being able to, I see this as self-efficacy too, of being able to summarize the text paragraph by paragraph. And that's exactly what we had found, is that most of the students struggled with summary writing on Read Authentics. So I think that's like just kind of a nice connection between how you can use data to kind of inform the strategies that you were using. And I wonder if that might have changed. Like if we had found like actually summary writing, they're like really good at summary, like maybe that would have changed your like informed your instruction differently. But I think that's just kind of a nice connection between kind of how you could look at the data and then say, oh, I have these great strategies that people can use to support their thinking.
I think it's interesting because I think it really points to that performance anxiety that people have. Summarizing can seem vulnerable if you're not just going to parrot exactly what you read. It's generative, it's creative, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there and maybe get it wrong. I talk to them a lot about failure and making mistakes, which is actually forgetting is making a stronger neural pathway, but you don't know if you've forgotten unless you test and assess yourself. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah. Well, yes, I guess I just want to end this by saying thank you so much for partnering with us. We learned a lot from you. And I think it's been like a helpful project in just thinking about what does it really take to be college and career ready, specifically in literacy skills. So yes, thank you so much. I'm going to move on to closing unless, Vicky, did you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
No, thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks. So Dr. Charlton and Vicky, thank you so much for being here. Just in closing today, I do want to just kind of reiterate what we've kind of discussed and just thinking about how we can really help prepare students for college readiness. So we know that it takes a lot of complex literacy skills, and we've really heard about an approach that really is student-centered, taking what students know, building on their strengths, and then giving them the tools to be successful. And I think this is a really great illustration of how to do that. So Amy and Vicky, I really applaud you for the work that you're doing, because I think going to also benefit the field in general and just kind of showing us what's possible. Because we know that if students come to college and they're not fully ready, they sometimes get put into like remediated classes, which don't necessarily build up the skills that students need, but you really took a different approach. So I really appreciate that approach you've taken. So yeah, just in closing, I just want to say thanks again. And then if we do have any questions, we'll definitely stick around. Dr. Charlton, did you want to say anything in closing? Do you
No,
have any
it's
other?
just been my honor to get to do this work. And like I said, when it starts with yourself, you have this understanding of the confidence that's needed to overcome, right? And that's that resilience piece that we all see and see opportunities to grow in our students. So I would love to stay on for questions. You may forward those to me. I'm right in the middle of practice, so I am jumping off. But
Yes, don't you worry.
but I will forward those to me. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And it was a real honor to get to do this work alongside you.
Yes, well, thank you so much. And we look forward to your publications and just learning more from you.